Good morning, everyone who's on there.
Good morning.
You let me know, Lindsay, when. Oh, hello there.
I learned so much so far. It's been wonderful.
Great.
Yeah,
I have too.
This is Linda calling in from California, so it's a very early start for me.
Oh
my gosh.
Thank you.
Oh.
Whoa.
And I'm not on video because I look really bad at 7 a.m. I only had time to walk my dog.
Hi, Susan.
Okay, I'm going to put everybody on mute right now so Ariella can introduce. Okay, is that everybody? Yeah, okay.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for getting up early, especially early in California, to join our first virtual Rivertown Repair Cafe. We want to thank all of our volunteers, attendees, organizers. Lindsay there, Taylor, is one of the chief organizers, as am I, Ariella Gastel. And then I don't think our other organizer is on the line, Dean Galley, but he is the co-chair of the Terrytown Environmental Advisory Council. We also need to support the Hastings Conservation Committee for their support. And I just wanted to go through, for those who haven't attended Repair Cafe, if there are questions about it, it's an international organization and you can find out information online. I think in Lindsay's emails, there were some Facebook pages and website addresses for you to look at it, but we'll take questions either at the end or another time about Repair Cafe. John Wackman is supposed to be joining us at some point, and he is the one that really started this all up in the Hudson Valley. So hopefully you'll get to meet him later. Before I introduce our guest fixer, I just wanted to let you know that we are all muted. That helps us with sound control and managing. But if you have a burning question and you need to see a demo again, Susie's going to be doing 3 demos. Just raise your hand or use the chat function. And Lindsay or I will stop Susie and ask your question. Otherwise, at the end of her demo period, you'll have free range to ask any questions. So use your chat box. If you don't know how to use the chat box, let us know now so we can help you. It's at the bottom of your screen. Also, at the end, we'd love your feedback. Send us an email what you think about this, because this is our first one. We are always continuously improving, hopefully, for the community. So we welcome your feedback. We really hope to see you physically at our next Repair Cafe in the next few months. So without further delay, we are very lucky to have Suzie Fromer, who has contributed her talents for the Hastings Repair Cafe the last few times. And she will tell you a little bit about herself. Thanks.
I really enjoy doing this, and I just want to say a big thank you to both of you guys for arranging this. It was really sad when the May date on my calendar went and there was no Repair Cafe, so I was really happy to get your email that we were going to do this. I grew up, my parents were in the antiquing business. They had an antique shop. And so I grew up in a house where repairing things and restoring things was a way of life. And I didn't realize sort of how influenced I was by that until I came back to this recently. I did jewelry work in college. I went to Dartmouth and they had a jewelry student workshop. And that was my work study job, was learning and then teaching other students how to make jewelry. And, but then I went and did other things, but recently came back to this when my sister asked me to repair something, and I really enjoyed it. And then when I saw the Repair Cafe, and I had just opened up a little beading business on Etsy, and so I've been really, really having a good time with this. And part of that is that I have, from my early days collecting vintage stuff, a lot of old findings and old pieces, and that's sort of the trick to being good at repair, is just having the stuff and the tools, of course. So that's how I got into it.
Super.
So I, you know, I have done both of the cafes so far. So I have a bunch of things that I just wanted to show you that are sort of like typical repairs that come in, because that's obviously what breaks, and I thought those would be good things to show people. So let me get my glasses. That's important to be able to really see, and having a good light is really important. It makes all the difference between really being able to get in something and fix it. Okay, so this is a necklace that someone dropped off to me. I had a few people who had some stuff that needed repaired, so I had them bring it. And I wanted to show you this one because it is a very typical thing that needs repairing. So I'm gonna pull this down, and it's very hard to see this. So I also drew a picture. But basically, this is what they call a spring ring clasp. This is my poor image of it. But this is the part that goes around, and this pulls back and opens. And this is the whole spring ring, but this is the loop. And so when you buy them, okay, if you're doing your own repairs, if you're doing your own jewelry work, beading, you can buy them with this loop open or closed. Now, if it's open, that means it's not soldered, and that's why I have this little crack there to indicate that you can pull it apart and put it on jewelry, and that's great, that's fine. But the problem is, it's very thin gauge wire, and so these tend to pull apart. So this is one of the most common repairs that I see. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to replace the clasp with one that isn't open. Now, something has to open, so instead I'm going to put a jump ring in there. And a jump ring is a small ring that has an open slot like that, but it's a thicker gauge wire, and so it's a little bit more, it's stronger. And so it will be less likely to open again. And I don't know that I'll do it on air right now, but I also typically, if I have a chance, I would put a little drop of glue there, a little really strong, like crazy glue, because that's just your only line of defense to keep it closed. So that is the first thing I'm gonna do. So, you know, you can use different pliers, but these are what they're called, it's called a chain nose plier, where it's flat on the inside and sort of rounded. And they're really good for gripping. They're, you know, they come in different widths, but it's like a good classic plier. And you really do need two, because you're gonna hold on both different sides of it. So that's what you need. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is, this one comes with this little, see, like right here, ring. And so one of the first things I do when I repair for people is, you wanna know a few things. You wanna know, I have my questions here. You want to know what the material is that you're working on. And I have to say, I looked at this, and it had this nice piece here, but you know, no marking. So it's very shiny. I didn't think it was sterling because it's not tarnished, you know, but I have this is actually a vintage jeweler's loop. You could use a magnifying glass, whatever. I actually usually use this when I'm doing tick checks to see if something is actually a deer tick, because it is so small. So I was able to place this on there, and sure enough, it said 925. So I now know what I'm working with, which is sterling. So I want to replace with sterling. And also, I did contact the woman who dropped it off, and my two questions for her were, are you right or left-handed? Because this one didn't slip, but the other one I was doing slipped out, and so you want to know which hand you want to put behind your neck, if you're right or left-handed, to do the clasp. And I also asked if she had any nickel allergies, because I didn't know at that time what I was going to replace it with. And she actually said she did have a nickel allergy. So right there, again, I know I want to use sterling. I don't want to use something that is not, that I'm not clear on the ingredient, the materials. So again, you can see how this one is, you know, open. So I'm going to put this one away. I would not use that one again. This one is closed. This one is soldered and closed. And this is a jump ring that is open. And so again, you want to hold it, and you open it up by just twisting it, holding them both. I had a big cup of coffee this morning, which is not always advisable for doing small work. Makes your hands shake a little. So then you put that through. Oops. So you want to open it up enough, so, you know, and then you want to close it. And, you know, you want to be really gentle with your pliers. If your pliers get marked up, then they tend to mark the metal. So that's another thing to be aware of. You don't want to be using pliers for good jewelry work that have been used for other things. So again, this one has this little tag loop. So you just want to put it through there. And you just want to, then you close it up. Now, the thing about metal is it bounces back. So sometimes when you work with metal, you really need to push it back where you want it to get it to stay right in place. And I'm just going to adjust my light a little here. Okay. Just take a look at that. And you want to, look at it from 2 different angles, and sometimes you can feel it to feel that if it's open or not. Just look at it right there, and like from the side, it looks a little different from the top sometimes. And just like I said, push it a little bit past, and then it should end up right exactly where you want it. So that is what you do. But again, I would like to put a little drop of glue on it because that will keep it from opening up. But again, you can see how much thicker this is than this. And so it really should help you not just pull apart in that way. So that's the best thing is just not to use open rings, open jump rings on your spring ring. So this is, it's like I call it a third hand. It's a plier that's just, it's very flexible, and you could just keep it where you have it by adjusting it.
Will you tilt up a little bit to see?
Sorry, you got it?
Oh, yes, thank you.
So it's like a third hand. And so when I glue things, now you get, see, so subtle. You got to find, I did a good job because I'm having trouble finding the opening. There it is. And you want to just clip it in there so it keeps it from rotating. And just, there it is. I like this. This is this crazy glue. I don't care what brand, but a crazy glue that is like a gel because it's not as liquid. So it just goes where you want it, but it's still good to have, it's still good to have like a little pin or something very thin, or pencil, whatever you want to sort of scrape off any extra glue. So I like to have something like that. This is actually a jewelry piece of something, but that's okay too. So, and you want a little piece of paper, you want to get it, just, get it started first so you don't get a big glob. But I see the gel doesn't run and it just goes exactly where you want it to. I like that very much. Super glue, precision pen. There's so many kinds out there now.
Where did you get the third hand?
Michael's.
Oh, okay.
I said a lot of the supplies I have come from Michael's, although they don't carry the better like beading stuff, and some of that does matter in terms of, and I'll get into that when I do the beading, some of it like which wire you use, and they don't tend to carry those, but everything else they have really good stuff. I mean, pliers and all those kinds of things I've been able to get. And what's the benefit of that is over Amazon, of course, is that you can go get it that day, which is often very nice.
Yeah.
You just want to put a little drop right where we have it open. And it's tricky because it's not always the tightest, you want to keep it open. There we go. And just put a little tiny. And then just, like I said, anything you see, you're going to see afterwards. So just use a little pin, sort of run it over the crack as well so that it gets in there, and then wipe it off. And then it's just an extra little piece of security. I think that's it.
Suzie, will you show us the glue again that you like so much, like the brand name?
Yeah, you know what? There's this one also, Crazy Glue.
Okay.
Or this one's just Precision Pen Loctite. Anything that says a Crazy Glue is good. But I really do like the gel ones because it really does stay in place, because the other stuff will run everywhere and get all over your hands. I will say they talk a lot about these other sort of cements for jewelry. And these are good for tying a knot, for putting on a knot if you're making elastic, but I don't like these for this kind of work because honestly, I've had things fall apart. It just is, this is not as strong as a Crazy Glue. So this is not sufficient. And people have recommended it a lot, and I have found a lot of things have fallen apart, but the Crazy Glue is great. And if you can only get the liquid, it's fine. It's just harder to work with. So you just leave this, put this aside to kind of hang out. This one's done. That's very simple. So now this was another one that, yeah, right? and this is, I see these all the time come in, and it's so simple. But again, to replace it with the jump ring, even if the jump ring is a little bigger than you would have liked, or you can, order them, or you can make your own jump rings. It's actually not that hard if you want to make one precisely sized. This is actually called a jump ring mandrel, and you can see it has like these different little like ridges, and so each one is a different place to stop. And what you would do is you would just wrap a wire around it, and you could make it then out of any material. You could, you know, I tend to use a lot of 14 karat gold fill or sterling, but if I'm fixing, you know, really vintage stuff that's costume, you don't need to. And also sometimes the color doesn't match then. But this is the way to make it smaller, or, you know, you wrap it and then you would cut it with clippers and you can make one smaller as well. So that's a nice, and again, I got this from Michael's as well. Okay, so this was a different piece from the same woman, and it is not gold. I looked for markings, so, but again, she did tell me she had a nickel allergy, so I'm gonna use, this is 14 karat gold fill, which is nickel free, and I liked this one. This is a little chain that I use actually I do a lot of pieces that are like, it's a choker made of beads, and then I like a little flexible end so that you can clasp, you know, it can fit different people. But I like this one for this because this is an unusual piece. This is the clasp, right? It's like a hook and eye clasp, and this piece has several places where you can hook it. And so what broke was this sort of slipped off here, and so I want to match that it has this nice oval shape, and so I'm going to use this as like this thin oval shape. So it's sort of, because this is, you can see this, it's going to be way too small to fit through this. So I'm going to try to stick this through here. We'll see what we can do. And sometimes you can't. Sometimes you just don't have the right materials. Sometimes these things are not handmade, and I just don't have the equipment to fix them. So there are all kinds of nippers. I really like this one. I like it for when I'm doing my beading, because because of the way it's flat and so tight and sharp, you can really get right up to where you're cutting and without any excess. So I just tend to use this for everything because I like that. So I'm just gonna have to cut these open. So
Suzie, does that nipper have a brand name that you particularly like?
You know what? It says YTH170, and I think that I bought this one on Amazon, and I sent you the link for it.
Oh, okay, so it's in that list.
Yeah, but but they call this a nipper rather than, or a wire cutter. Those are like the two, and this may actually be like an industrial wire cutter, but I just love how flat and flush you can get with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, the other ones tend to be a little rounded and they don't make as nice a cut, even though it's obviously fine for snipping things. It's just not as nice. Just want to cut that open, and you can use, this is very fine, but you can use these. Just want to open it. You know, you have to bend it to open it, but you know, the less you bend it, the better chance you have of getting it back in nice shape. So this is super tiny, but let's see if we can, this nice thin wire. Yep, there we go. The other reason I chose these was they're almost oval, and these are oval, and so you can make an oval by just squishing it flat. So I'm gonna do that as soon as there we go. So now we can loop it on, and now we're gonna close it. And so now we want to get the ends closed though, so kind of shape it. Now this is fine, you know, it is a thin wire. So of course, that's nice because it fits through the hole, but it's going to be a little more delicate. So you got to be aware of that. So you just want to kind of squish it flat, try to make that, obviously you want it to be as closed as you can because that's where things slip out, right? The smaller, this is very soft. There we go. So now I'm going to try to flatten it a little because it's not quite, you can see it's there, but it's not quite the same shape. Now the other tool that I have, and I don't use it often because it's not, I might not have put this on the list because I actually don't, they're not that easy to use because they're fat, but these are like nylon covered pliers. So these are good for very specific things, but like the detail work is not very helpful because it's too fat, but it's good for not marking things. So what these are actually the best for, I bought these because I was making a necklace that had a ribbon and has like a ribbon end. And so when you squish those ribbon ends that you don't want to mark it. So that's what this is good for. But I thought this might be nice for making it a little more oval. Let's see if we can't just kind of squish it just a little. Oh, it's pretty good. They're not as precision, but they don't mark. So that's sort of the trade-off that you make. I think we pulled it a little too. There we go. I'm liking that. So we were able to do it. and get it on. I will glue this, but I'm not going to do that right now unless you guys need to see that. It's very simple, and but there it's done and it's it's fixed. But again, especially because that wire was so thin, I'm going to want to just give it some glue so it doesn't, because otherwise something just pulls right open and you'll be in the same boat again. And if you lose the piece, it's hard. Yeah.
So that's okay if you don't glue it, but would you put it on that extra hand? Is that
Yeah,
where you would put it?
absolutely. I would do the exact same thing, and I'm still letting that one dry as well. But yeah, that's exactly what I will do. It's just another. I just think it's a nice level of security, and because if you lose the piece, then so that's what's nice about doing that. So again, this was the one that had slipped out of my. When I was working on this, it had come out, and so I wasn't sure which handedness it was, and so that that's why I was like, just tell me if you're right or left-handed. Yeah, so I'm gonna put that one over here. So the next thing I have is very, very simple. I have 3 examples, all from the same woman. She had earrings that were the ear wires all had different issues. Some had broken, some had gotten misshapen. So very simple repair, and a really nice, easy thing to show. Beautiful pieces too, okay? So again, these are clearly marked to the naked eye that they say sterling, so you know what you're dealing with. And the reason that's important is it's not just, oh, I want to replace it with silver if I can. In this case, I'm actually not going to replace it with silver because I don't have that. But it's important to know because it's tarnished. And so if you're going to replace it with something that's shiny and it's tarnished and then you clean it, or if you're not going to clean it, you just need to sort of be aware because like this is not silver. It's not going to change color. And so you want to match it now. That's sort of another reason you need to know specifically about silver. So this one had some ear wires which are silver, and they are misshapen. I don't know if you can see that. And in fact, this one is I don't know if this ball came off. Yeah, okay, looks like it had a ball as well that sort of slid off. But they just don't look nice. So I'm gonna just replace them with sort of just your standard one, which is just gonna look a little better. So I went through what I had, and I'm just gonna show you. And so this person does not have a nickel allergy. Now, the pieces that I bought recently for my kit that were I don't know what the word is without too negative a connotation, not genuine silver or whatever, just sort of regular metal, I made sure to buy stuff that said nickel free because I bought it to be able to have stuff for the Repair Cafe. But I had a few pieces from my previous work and I don't know about them. And in fact, I think those match better. So again, I checked with her and she said it's not a problem. So because you can see I have some that are bright silver and I have some that are sort of like a worn color, and they're both not quite right, but I had these which were just a little bit in between, and I thought that was the best color match, and I don't worry about it because she said it was okay. So again, this is very simple, but makes a big difference, especially if you lose one. And so in this case, she has mismatched ones. So now we're gonna change them both so that they're matched. So you can see this, yeah? So again, you wanna get your 2 pliers. You can hold it with your hand or if you need 2 sets, but basically this one, you're just gonna hold it and you just turn it one side so you open it, okay? So it's just that easy. And then same thing here, I actually had opened these up already, but I'll show you how to open it. It's very simple. I had opened these up because they were on something else. You just hold it, you have to find the one that opens, see? So, because the ball kind of holds, it kind of hides, which is the end, but if you pull the ball back, you can see it's this top one that's gonna open. And then you just pull it to the side. And then when you're done, you just pull it back. It's just very, very simple. And these are quite strong, so they're not gonna just plop open, which is really nice. So one of the qualities, there's several qualities of metal, and one of them is called gauge. And the gauge means the thickness of the wire. So typically the thicker the wire, the bigger millimeter of the wire, the stronger it is. But there's also something called temper. And so in other words, there's other, the hardness of the metal is different. And there are, with silver, with all kinds of metals, there's different tempers. And so a wire can be thicker, but have a temper that is sort of flexible. And so those are the 2 things to be aware of when you work with it. There's basically the softest is called soft, dead soft. And that's good for wire wrapping, but then it goes up to like half hard, which is like sort of a good flexibility for wire wrapping because it's still, you can move it, but it's not going to, it's not going to be so soft that you squish it, and then there it goes all the way up to full hard. So I'm not aware of the temper of this, but I can see from working with it that it's hard. Also, the more you work with metal, it tends to temper it. It tends to make it harder, make it a little stronger. So that's just other things to be aware of. So like, for instance, this wire, which was on it, the temper seems to be too soft. So that's why it's all bent and squishy, even though it's quite thick. So I think she's better off, even though these are not sterling, they look better, they're neater, and they're not all, you know, squishy like that. So I closed it, but I want it, this ball is, there we go, the ball slipped. Again, you want to make them even though there is a head in between. Remember that when you work with earrings. So you're not looking at them right next to each other, that does help. But when you're sitting here working with it, you can see them, and you want to try to make them even, right? So you just want to wiggle it back into place. It's just a little far over, and then you want to close it a little just so it doesn't pop open or slip off. And you also want to make sure that that round stuff stays as round as you want it. You don't want it to be just misshapen, so you got to be gentle. So just round. It's a little open, but this is quite thick, so this is not going to slip off. I'm not going to glue this. You know, it's not the same as the chain that we just did, which was tiny on a tiny chain. Okay. That's that, and this one I'm just going to slip off. But to me, I mean, even though it would go through your ear, it just makes a big difference. I just think it really doesn't look good that it's all sort of bent and stuff. So that's what's nice about replacing it. But I do worry about color match. If you don't have a color match, that doesn't look nice. You sort of have your pick your poison. And usually I really do try to use sterling as much as I can, but it's not always necessary. So you have to make your choices. But when I'm working for someone, I always ask them what their opinion is, you know, and that's, it's important to me too. So I just want to kind of bend it there. So it's closed, it's flush, it's not sticking out. And so there we were able to just replace those. And I will give her back the original silver. I don't know that she'll do anything with it, but just, I like to do that. I like to give people their pieces back.
Suzie, if you were to keep those misshapen bits, like let's say those were saying, would you use that for anything, or that
well,
sort of
I do know how to solder. I just don't have that equipment here in my house. When I worked at the Dartmouth workshop, absolutely had all that stuff. And what you could do with something like this is you could put it in like a charcoal and melt it down, and you could that's what you would do with sterling, is you would melt it down and reuse it. But I don't have that capability right now. But you know, I would keep it. I keep all the bits because you never know what you're going to use to repair something, or you could reshape it. My concern with this is that it's just a little soft for usage, you know. But yeah, I would keep it. I would probably keep it. I tend to keep, except for little bits. I try, you know, you got to keep your house somewhat clean. But you know, it's jewelry people and crafty people tend to have houses overrun with bits. I want to show you just one last pair of earrings from the same woman. These I can't fix, and I wanted to show you that too, because I think it's valid, you know, to say, look, I'm so sorry, but I don't have the capability to fix this, and I'll show you what the difference is. Again, they're silver. And I'll tell you one thing, look how shiny everything was, right? The parrot ones were a little bit discolored, but a really good trick is to store silver in a plastic bag like this. I know it's kind of a pain, but if you seal it away from the oxygen, it doesn't get oxygenated, and that's what makes it tarnish. I love silver, I love to use real silver, and it does get tarnished. But if you can keep it like this, that helps keep it clean. The other thing is, if you keep those desiccating packs from like vitamins or all those, right, comes with everything, those suck the moisture out. And so if you put one of those in your jewelry box or something like that, that will also actually help keep it from tarnishing. So I do that with some of my jewelry that I have to sell, that it's not sitting around and I don't want it to tarnish. I throw some of those in there.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, and it's really, someone told me about that online, and I'm like, that's great. So the reason that I can't fix this one is because it needs soldering, and I don't have a solderer. I don't have a soldering iron. I don't want to burn my house down. So this loop came off, and I don't feel confident gluing. This is such a tiny point of contact. I just do not feel like I can do this. So that's all that's wrong. It is fixable. Someone could certainly do it, but I don't have it. The other thing is, when you it's not just about the soldering iron. When you solder, it gets it gets dark looking, and so then you have to put it in a pickle and you have to polish it. So you have to have the whole setup. You have to have the flux, you have to have the carbon so that there no oxygen gets in, and then you have to be able to clean it up with a buffer. So I just don't have those tools. So I want to give this one back to her, but I just wanted to show you that that's something that I, for instance, will not be able to fix at a cafe.
You know, some places in the...
I could find out. I certainly know a jeweler who does solder. I don't know if she's doing repairs, but there are certainly places. I think there is even a place in Irvington. They do some repairs there. And if they can't fix that in-house, they might be able to send it out. So certainly any regular jewelry shop, it's a very simple repair, but you just have to have the equipment to solder. So that's just a different setup.
I have found that jewelry shops that 20 years ago that would do a quick fix
Don't do that anymore.
don't do that anymore.
There's not much money in it. So I can see
Right. In Hastings, we had a gentleman, a husband and wife team that he would just go in the back, go, zoom, zoom, and she's like $5.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's what this is nice for, because those kinds of things, no problem. But the soldering is just, it's kind of a big setup. Okay, so I'm going to tilt up for a second just because I'm going to be very careful and not bang, because this is my next piece. So this was actually from the same woman who brought me the earrings. And, I'm going to show you this first, too. It's on my board here. She brought me these beads, and she said it was a broken piece. And she said, this is just broken. These are just beads you can have. That's what she saw when she, and you know what? I have a picture. I can hold this up to the camera. I thought this was interesting. Go back. Whoops. Nope. And it's a lovely woman. She does so much for the town. So I'm so happy to be able to do this for her. So this is what nope, that's the original. Sorry. That's mine. There we go. That's what she brought me. Right? And so she saw this as just some beads that I could have. I saw this as a piece that could be repaired and returned to her. Now, it's not long enough. It's going to need some extra beads, but I have stuff. I have everything. So it was a lot of fun. So I took that and I did this. Whoa. And that's just what happened, but we'll put it back together. So this is a tray. I put this on my equipment list. That's very helpful for beading. Oh, the one thing I want to show you first, though, before I move on to that, was the earrings. Like I said, those are all typical fixes. I had actually a really interesting fix at the last repair where someone came who doesn't have pierced ears. And she had a pair of earrings that were clip-on, but they also had a post that went through your ear. They could work for, it was just like a more secure. And so I said, well, if it's okay with you, I said, I would just snip off the post, because it would clip on her ears and she didn't have a hole. So that was an unusual fix. But this is something I did years ago, because I used to buy vintage jewelry. And I have kind of an issue with like taking things, you have to sort of get over your own moral, what you want to do with it. They were clip-ons, and I hate adulterating things. But at the time I was like, I just want to wear these. So these were pieces that were clip-ons that I changed into wearable earrings for non-clip-on ears. So in other words, I bent them and I added an earpiece to it. So I was able to wear, so I used to wear these all the time in high school. I was wearing all these like vintage earrings that I was able to turn into, I just loved that stuff. So again, I still feel like when I found them, I was like at a little moral pain, because you're adulterating they're not valuable. I just kind of have but I made that choice to be able to wear them, and just some fun things. So that's a very typical repair that you can do for stuff. And I used to go with my parents to antique shows and buy vintage stuff all the time. And so I had all these kind of funky, things. Very, very simple to do. Okay, so this is a jewelry tray. The other thing I've been working on, this green mat, I made myself out of a velour blanket that my sister's cats had ripped holes in. So she had this giant blanket, and I just cut bead mats. Otherwise you can buy them for like $5, but I just cut them into these bead mats. And the point of a bead mat is it keeps the beads from rolling around so that they don't go all over the place. But now I'm going to move on to this, which is a beading tray. And you don't have to use something like this, but for what I'm about to do, it's perfect, because you can see it. I laid out the pieces so that I could decide what pattern. So this is really for a pattern. And when I do a very simple red, green, whatever, I don't use this. But it helps. It's got a measurement if you want to know how long to make it, if you want to have a center that, but for me, for this, I had to pick beads and take it apart. So I wanted to do that. So again, if you remember that picture I showed you, it was a very sort of old looking, she was like, just discard it. And I was thinking, oh, just, you know, whatever, it's some pot metal. I don't know what to replace it with. But I got out my jeweler's loop and I checked out this end and I didn't see anything. And then I checked out the clasp and tiny, 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 I can't see it without my jeweler's loop, right here on the little inside part of the clasp, it says 925. So I'm working with sterling here. So what I did next was I got out my silver polish and I polished it. And oh my God, it's so nice. And I mean, all of it is sterling. So it changed it, what it changes is what I could use. Actually, I don't think I used any silver. I'm using her original clasp. I like to do that if I can. But it changed my attitude towards it and I was able to polish it. So I chose to, these beads they were not original to the piece, but she had a bead like this. And so I decided that was a nice, you know, fix for it. And it had one pearl. So I had a few vintage pearls and it had one red bead. And so I have these are really fun. They're just these little red beads. If you can see them, they're vintage glass beads from a lampshade that my parents had replaced when they were doing a lamp. And it had this just dramatic, like check glass beads hanging off of it, but it was broken, but I kept them all these years. And I was like, what a fun thing to be able to pop in here. So that's what I've done here. It did move a little tiny bit, which is tragic because I have to string it in order, but let me just, I think that was all. Whoops, nope, that guy goes there. Really, I just wiggled it, just like a tiny, tiny. So, so this is going to be a surprise for this woman, which I'm very excited by. But again, I know her. So what you need to know is size. That's the other thing you need to know when you're working with things. So again, it was missing beads. You know, if someone gives you one thing and you have all the pieces, you know the size. But she's tiny. She's got a smaller wrist than me. So I measured my wrist and I'm like, it's got to, you know, fit me maybe even a little smaller. And this one actually, and a bracelet it doesn't, you know, you don't want it tight. You want it to be able to dangle a little, but you don't want it to come too far. And this one has this neat, it's got 3 loops. You can see that. So it's just got a little bit flexible sizing built right in. So, you know, you don't worry as much about being too small because it's got a few options for it. Okay. So now we're going to do, this is pretty much just regular beading, but it's a repair because I'm fixing something that would have been thrown out like otherwise. So again, I have a clasp, so I don't need to worry about that. Sometimes this is, it's kind of called a lobster clasp. There's different names for different ones. This may be not a standard lobster. They're fine, they're fun to use. I like the spring rings just because some of the pieces I've designed, you can wear the clasp at the front and it has some loops. And so I like the round ones because they kind of blend in better, but these are a little bit easier to handle and see. But sometimes they come on an open jump ring. There's no reason for that. So the first thing you would do is open the jump ring and discard it, because adding an open jump ring to your piece with a wire is just another place for it to fail. So again, if it comes on an open jump ring, just discard the jump ring. You don't need that. Sort of the same thing as the open jump ring on the spring ring. You just don't need that extra place for it to fail. So I have these cool little things. I have 1,000 little boxes, but this is my sterling one. And so I just grab it and it's got all my stuff for beading. And I have spring rings, but I don't need. And I have this as a crimp tube. And I usually use 2 millimeters by 2 millimeters. That's just what I use. And can you see that?
Yes.
So, and I sent you very specific information. I think they're Beadsmith. I wrote it on here, but it tends to fade. Beadsmith silver pack. They are not sterling. I think they're plated. And originally when I was doing this work, I was a snob and I was like, I want silver through and through. And let me tell you, these are a little bit thicker and they hold better. And even though I was using genuine silver, they weren't holding as well because the metal was thinner. So get that out of your head. That doesn't matter. You're going to cover it with a sterling crimp tube cover, which is like a little, it looks like a bead when you're done. So it's going to be silver on the outside and it's worth using the ones that are going to hold better. So that was something I had to learn the hard way. So the next thing you need is wire. And these are the wires, again, Michaels does not sell this. And I had to learn the hard way that the stuff they did sell wasn't as flexible and it was breaking. So Soft Flex, Soft Touch is a very good brand. And, you know, there are other brands as well that I like, but these are, I really like the thicknesses of these. This one is it's very fine. I use this for most of my stuff when I'm making, I do a lot with 3mm beads, which are pretty small, 2 and 3. And I like to do a lot of wraps. So it's very good for flexible because you wrap, you know, several times around your wrist. This one is 0.10 inches, but I'm going to use something a little thicker. This is what they call the fine today, because these beads are quite large and they're heavy, and this is not going to have to flex around. So I think it's always better to use the strongest one if you can. So I have one last piece. I'm going to use it here, and that's that. And again, this was definitely on my list because I think these are important. Okay, so what you do is you go through, and again, right, there's no loop, so you just go right through it, okay? It's a good, yeah, is that okay? So what you do is you want to go through the loop first. Sorry, you want to go through the crimp tube first. Then you go through the piece that you're doing. And this is how you start anything. You don't have to start with the clasp, I just like to. And then you go back through the crimp tube. And you pull it pretty tight. I want to make sure you have some extra just so you don't, you know, while you're working, you don't. So, you know, I don't really love to see this big open loop, but you do want it to be able to move. And you are going to cover it with a bead. So you need a little extra room. I mean, you can't go wrong, but I don't like to see too much of it, but you also don't want it to be too tight. See how that wiggles? So I think I like that. Okay, so now these are the tools that you really do need to bead. You can use regular pliers, but I just think it's a lot. You can use the chain nose, but I think there are certain tools that are really worth having. So this is a crimper, and you can see it has like 2 little holes. One is sort of like a half round, and one has like a little pinchy part in it. It kind of butt shaped. Okay, so you want to hold it so that with the little curvy shapes down, right? So the one that's sort of has the heart kind of butt shape one, that's the one you want to go to first. And all you do, you want to kind of as even as you can. Oops. It's very, you want it to be kind of tight, but it's just to start to work with. So, and you want to just squeeze it sideways. And you want to squeeze it pretty firmly, because you're going to really, you want this is what's going to hold it and keep it on. So you squeeze it pretty hard, and then you take it out, and you can see it's got that sort of like heart-shaped imprint in it, okay? You want to turn it, you want to go now to the round ones and do it sideways. So you're squishing it, so you've crimped it like this, right? And now you want to crimp those crimps together so that you're really securing it and also making it nice and small. So let me tilt this down again, and you just want to, again, crimp it so you can sort of see it, and just crimp it sideways. And just like that. And then sometimes I come up and use the little edgy of it just to sort of really make sure it's nice. But these are so nice and thick, the metal on these, they really, really hold well. And I even come up and just make sure it's really nice and tight, because sometimes if it's not sort of tight enough, it's not that it won't hold, but it makes it hard for you to close the bead cover on it, because you got to make it small enough to put this on it and have it look good. So in other words, this is a 2 by 2 millimeter crimp tube, and this is a 3 millimeter crimp tube cover. And so basically you just slip it in, okay? But again, right, it has to be squished small enough so that when you close it around it, you don't see it, because it just looks better. So again, this is another tool. It's not necessary. Oh, I laid everything out. Light blue. Oh, here it is. It's not necessary, but I just love it. It makes my life so much easier. It's for closing crimp tubes. It is just little and round, and it's Bead Buddy. Again, I got this at Michael's, and this is a good one for a 3 millimeter. So it makes your life easy, because I've had a lot, if you close them past each other, they buckle, and then you just have to cut them off and throw them out. And it's frustrating. So, and if you're doing a lot of beading, this is what you're doing every time. So you just close it. You just close it very gently. I use the sort of the big ends, but then you also can come around and just squish it very gently, shape it, keeps it nice and round. When you do this with regular pliers, you really risk squishing it and out of its shape. And the whole idea is that it looks like a bead that you don't even sort of, you know, realize that that's where the closure is. And if you close it, I popped it a little bit too much. You can come back, and I'm actually not that happy with that one, which happens sometimes. That's all right. You can kind of, if the lines don't line up, you can come back and pop it from the side. That's not bad. And you don't want to see the crack, you know, so that's pretty good. So now, these are your nippers, but these are really big beads, which is lovely, because what I like to do just for extra security is keep some of this through the other beads, right? Because if it's caught right here in this tiny little tube and it pulls out, you're done, it falls out. So what I like to do, if I can, is string it through and then snip it. So in other words, I'm gonna snip both of them through. And again, I polished all these beads and they came out so nicely. So this is plenty, right? In fact, I might almost just run it through this one. So in other words, I'm running both pieces through just because I can, it's extra security. Run it through there, and then you would want to snip it on this end. Or you could just take it out and have it go halfway through. That's fine too. So you just snip it like that, and you're hiding it through here. So it's just a little bit, if something should happen, right? And then this is the easy part. You've lined everything up, and you just want to make sure you've oriented it correctly. So in other words, this bead has little like end caps that sort of like that. So you want to make sure don't make a mistake. If you do, you go back. And again, this bead wasn't original. I had it, I stuck it in. It's just an onyx. I have them for making different stuff. And then these little vintage ones, and I made a pattern, just had some fun with it.
Susie?
Yeah.
We only have about 10 minutes left.
I am fine if people want to ask questions, because this is
what I was going to say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll show you the end, which is basically the exact same thing, but that everyone can please feel free to ask.
I think we can, Lindsay, I think if we unmute, we'll be okay, because there's not as many people. Anybody have any questions?
There we go. That one was hard.
Wow, you are speedy.
Oh, this is the easy part. Stringing beads is very, very easy. It's the detail work that's hard, you know? And these are cool too. It's when you do the really skinny ones, you can really make yourself a little crazy.
And there's Dave.
Susan?
I can't hear. Lindsay,
Lindsay's muted.
you're muted, Lindsay.
That's okay.
Jackie, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yes,
What's
I
your
can
question?
hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
I do a lot of beading, and sometimes I have some multi-strand necklaces that are old, and one of the strands has failed.
Mm.
Do you have any quick tips for salvaging it so that the whole thing doesn't have to be taken apart?
It depends on what the ends look like, but if you could trim it so that you don't see it. I mean, it's hard to say without, do you know what I mean? Like if it's a 3 thing and you could like cut the one prong off and then you would have the 2, you know, if you're not seeing that, do you still have the beads that fell off or no? Because
That's the thing. I have some of them, but what I'd like to do is like get rid of that strand as if it never existed.
You know, you could do that as long as you're not seeing where you cut it off. You know, usually you might see it at the clasp, right? But you might not see it at the whole thing. I haven't done a lot of work. I've done some repairs. I haven't done a lot of work with multi-strand stuff. It's really complicated to get it to hang right, you know, the different strands. So
that's the problem, because I was hoping that there would be a way to introduce a new strand that was all the right length and everything using beads that I have,
right.
and adopting it into that necklace. And it seems to be a problem because when I open up the mechanism of the ends, everything is in jeopardy.
Right. All right. So this is, again, it's a little snug on me, but this woman is tiny. So I think it's going to be okay. I could add something else in, but I just didn't want to, like, the integrity of the piece to me was like, I had some little elephant beads that were like made out of mother of pearl, but I'm like, I don't know if she likes elephants, and I don't, that's, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do this. She lives right near me. If it doesn't fit, I can do it again. It's really not difficult to restring. So I'm going to leave this like this and just not, end it, which is very, very easy.
Okay, well, Jackie, are you saying though that your piece are 3 different strands going into one clasp?
Yes, exactly. And what I'll have is like a conical thing near the clasp where I'm going to be hiding all the knotted ends.
Right.
Oh, like one of these things.
With the crimp bead and everything, all that stuff is hiding under that cone. But one of the strands, for some reason, failed, and a lot of the beads got lost. So now I want to go back and make, because it wasn't important to the design of the necklace, I'd like to go back and remake that line of beading, but I'm not quite sure, like, without opening everything up, how to put it in, because everything is all tight.
You can't cut it. You can't find the strand and cut it.
Well, I can, removing the broken strand is not the problem.
The piece,
I'm
Jackie?
sure I could get in there and snip it. My problem is, how do I go back and introduce a whole new strand without everything loosening up?
Yeah.
You want to bead one strand and then incorporate it back into that conical shape.
Yes.
You have the piece in front of you?
No, I don't have it in front of me.
Oh.
It's in my sad failure drawer. I used to wear it all the time.
No. That's a future projects drawer. That's what.
Right. That's right. That's it.
So I just want to show real quickly. So what I did was I put I put this crimp tube. I went around. I went back through several beads. But now, especially because this is a thicker wire, you don't want it to be like super stiff. So this is one of those things I had to learn the hard way. You want a little play. You want a little gap, because as the beads slide up and down, it's going to be okay. And if you don't have a little gap, the beads can be too tight. So it's okay when you're all said and done to have a little gap. I just don't want it all on that side, because that's ugly. Do you know what I mean? So you want to pull the crimp tube up a little and have the gap on this side of it so that the beads have a little wiggle room, and especially because you're going to put that crimp tube cover on it as well. But it is okay to have a little play so that the beads are not too tight. And I'm just going to crimp this, and then this is done. I mean, you pop a tube on it and it's done. And so instead of having beads that were, extra to sit in my failed project drawer, it is goes back to the owner. So again, you just have it flat, do this. And things slip, so you got to just, always check it. And then once you've crimped it, it's in, you can always cut it. You can always redo everything. It's, nothing is set in stone. Nothing is, So again, you crimp it, you make those little finger things, and then you squish it together.
Susie, do you have any websites that you recommend to use?
Do I have any websites?
For supplies, I mean. You're the one in California? No, you live locally? Yeah.
Westchester. I love the bead store in White Plains. They have been so helpful to me. It's called, Bead. I can't remember the name of it, but it's right in White Plains. It's like right on near the brewery. There's like a Climbing Wolf or some brewery right near there or something. And I have the bead. Oh, here, bead everything. There we go. Very good store. So helpful. I've even taken some classes there just to, sort of see what I could do better. And they sell really good materials. And so they're the ones who sold me the crimp tube covers when I was having trouble, that kind of stuff. So for that, really, really good. Michael's is great for the tools. It's no problem for that. And for beads, though, beads are very expensive at bead stores, obviously, because they need to make a profit. So I do have my own, I have an Etsy shop where I sell stuff. So I really need to keep the prices down so I can sell it for something that's not exorbitant. So I tend to buy my beads on Etsy. It's just much more affordable. Mm-hmm. So
Do you ever go to bead shows?
I have. Again, the prices are a little high. So part of my background is that I also came from this as a rock collector. So I love gems and minerals. And so, yes, I did go. There was a whole bead show in Manhattan. It just canceled in March, but I did go to that one. And, you know, the sale prices are better and you do get to pick it up in person and see it in person. So yes, if I can, I absolutely go to bead shows. When I travel, I like to go to bead shops. My family hate it. I have boys. They are very disinterested, but it is so fun. When I was in Sedona, I found some wonderful stuff and just really, you know, you get to see different materials. And yeah, we kind of like, we do a pool or an outdoor water thing, and then we go to a beach shop. Like we kind of transition. I also love to go to thrift stores. Love it. Love it when I travel. I look for jewelry all the time, pieces for things I like. So
Good idea.
I love it. That's my favorite. So that, again, that's sort of my background is I just love that stuff. So you just want to do that. And that's, you know, that's it. That's it.
What's the name of your Etsy shop?
Little Hook Co., as in company, Little Hook.
I put that in the chat, and I'll be making sure to send it to everybody afterwards.
Yeah, I can do the link. Yeah, but I do a lot with vintage materials. I do a lot with vintage Bakelite, and I just love it. I love that it's not being, you know, it's being saved. So just like this was saved. And I'm so happy to have done this. This was like just this really nice piece. And she was like, well, here are the beads, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Susie, I've now realized pieces that I have can be salvaged.
Yes.
So just that realization.
Yeah, I know. And if not, then yes. I mean, look, I've had these beads for 25 years. These little glass beads, and here I was able to put them in here, and you know, so if you can't salvage it, you might still be able to use it as something else, which is super cool. And if you don't want a bead, that's fine too. If you want me to do it, Lindsay, I will do, because it's just about having the equipment. It's so easy for me, but to buy all this stuff, you don't even like. My mom tells me I don't have a business. I have a very expensive hobby.
My mom gave me, she made a necklace out of vintage Christmas or glass ornaments, like very, very tiny and fine, but she wasn't a professional at it. So it fits there very delicately.
I've gone back and fixed things. When I worked at Dartmouth, I worked with silver and soldering, but I didn't really bead. I did a really bad job beading things. I didn't know about crimp tube covers. I went back and restrung some of that stuff, and now it looks wonderful. I just didn't know, you know, and it's just, beading, I have to say, is really simple. And that's why I've gotten back into it, because I can do it from home without too much equipment, and you can make a finished piece very, very quickly. But it's a different look. It's a different look. So you know, it's just sort of different. I made this very, very simple. It was just a vintage Bakelite heart. It originally would have been it was made for buttons, and they didn't make them into buttons, and someone sliced it and polished it, and I glued it onto a leather choker. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff you can do with upcycled materials that's very similar or overlappy with repair work that I think is very, very fun. So.
Well, we have 2 minutes left. Oh boy.
You make me want to start doing this again.
You know what? I took a break when quarantines first happened with my shop, because I just felt kind of vapid. But then I got back into it, and it was escapism for me. And people are home looking for escapism, both to buy and to make. And I find it very meditative to bead. And I'm not a very meditative person, so I like the quiet, and I can just sit and do it. And it's just beautiful to make something. And when you're saving things, it's even more beautiful. I really love fixing things. It makes you feel really, really good. So, and for anyone who is local, I had told this to Lindsay, and she'll post my email. I'm happy if you want to drop stuff off at my house. I'm happy to do repairs. If I have the pieces to fix it, no charge. It's just, it's my pleasure. And I find it really, really, it makes me really happy. So.